Hi, my name's Leonie Bolt, and I went from high school troublemaker and long-time backpacker to accidental entrepreneur. After 15 years working as a professional photographer and running my own studio, I grew into becoming a personal empowerment and business mentor to help other women to follow their passions and find their purpose too. I've learned to pave my own way through life, and now I empower others to do the same, to break through their limiting beliefs and empower them to shine. Welcome to the Empowered to Shine podcast, where we dive deep into creating a life by your own design. Welcome back to the Empowered to Shine podcast. My name's Leonie, and our guest today is Karen Chaston from the Chaston Centre. Karen is an ex-CFO, and she helps people to deal with loss, but she also helps businesses to create the human experience in their business. Welcome, Karen. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Leonie, and thank you for having me. I'm excited about our conversation.
Fantastic. Now, Karen, it sounds like you've been on quite a journey to get from where you started to where you are now. So tell us a little bit about what made you transition into the Chaston Centre.
Well, it has been a journey, as you said, and back in, I guess really it's been a whole life journey, but let's only go back to 2011, July 2011, when my husband and I woke up thinking we were literally going to have a lazy Sunday at home. But within minutes, we were running out the back door, trying to wake our 27-year-old son, Dan, who was lying there in the fetal position, saliva coming out of his mouth. Though what we found, like when the paramedics arrived very, very quickly, that he had actually passed away there several hours earlier, which, as you can imagine, was just traumatic. It was the last thing we expected. We thought a healthy 27-year-old had gone out the night before with his mates. But unfortunately, he had come home, he fell over. Yes, he had drunk way too much, but it wasn't the alcohol, mixing up in his system that killed him. It was actually his lungs. So his lungs had failed him when he fell over and went to catch his breath. And it took me a long time to find all that out. And believe it or not, Dan actually told me that from the other side, what actually killed him.
So, wow, that's incredible. So obviously you were in a very high position at the time, and that gave you the reality check to make some changes.
Well, it took me a long time to do that reality check, because I literally went straight back to work the day after his funeral, working more, eating more, and drinking a lot more. And I probably would still be there until I had my second loss event. And, in hindsight, I now know that Dan's passing was meant to have been my wake-up call. But as it didn't happen, they had to send me another wake-up call. And I'm pretty sure if I hadn't woke up then, I'd have another one and another one and another one. Sometimes it takes a couple of slaps across the face for you to actually go, okay, I'm awake. I will do something.
Yeah.
And that second loss came 15 months after Dan passed, when the company I was working for was merging with another. And they said to me really early on, Karen, you're not going to be the CFO in the new company, but you'll be doing everything you're doing now plus more. And I was fine with that until they gave me my contract. And when I read my contract, it was 2/3 of what my current salary was at that time. And it was the greatest gift they ever gave me. And I was really angry for like 48 hours. But then I started to realize I'm only here for the money, which I had never realized before. And if I'd been honest with myself, I was wasting most of the money just to get through the day, just to keep going. So that's why I say that they gave me the greatest gift, because that gave me the time to stop and to look at my life, really, really deep dive into all areas of my life. And I realized that I wasn't living and loving my life. And I love the fact that you said, design a life, because that's what I say, a design a life that you live and love each and every day, because we don't. We think we know what makes us successful, but the formula just is so wrong. And so, yeah, that's how I got to doing what I'm doing now, which I just love. But it was a big, big, big deep dive into me, because that's where all my answers were.
Yeah, and they always are. And it comes back to finding gratitude from the worst situations and learning those lessons and not having to do it more than once.
Yeah. And it's so funny, Leonie, that you say lessons, because I say that all the time. And a while ago, it's probably back in like 14 or 15, I was talking to a lady and I said, in every loss, there's a lesson for you. And then I went, oh, and she goes, what? And I said, lesson. Like, our language tells us how to live our life. So the more that you find the lesson, the less on you. So by deep diving in and finding that lesson, it really is so much easier on you. I know that Dan's passing was a gift and a great lesson for me, not in the fact that he died, but in the fact of who I became after it. Because I was never going to leave my job. I loved my job and I was really good at it, but it was actually killing me. I look 10 years younger now than what I did then. I was always angry. I didn't even understand it. This is long before Dan even passed. But I thought, this is how you are when you are high rolling, receiving that salary, all that sort of stuff, which is total crap. The old put your own oxygen mask on first before you assist others. It truly is a philosophy that we should be embracing every single day, because I certainly wasn't doing that. I wasn't looking after me at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of corporate sort of positions, they do that to you. They ask so much from you. You've got to commit your whole self. And you're left going, is this really what I want at the end of the day? Is it really making me happy? Like you're saying, you really enjoyed your job, but what did you have outside of that? Probably not a lot.
No, I was drinking way too much just to get over the stress. And the funny thing about it is that if anyone said to me then, how do you cope with stress? So I would say, I don't get stressed. And I was right in my assumption, because I was always in that heightened state. I very rarely came down into the relax and restore. So I was right, but I was so wrong, because as we know, we have to come back down. We have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, so that we can run and fight when we need to, but also so we can rest and restore when we need to as well.
Absolutely. And that'll age you more than anything, is being in that heightened state for very long, prolonged periods of time.
Yeah, especially women.
Yes. So now you've been through all of that and it's helped you form what you do now. How do you help your clients deal with loss, and what does that look like?
Okay. So the biggest thing is, most people believe that loss is just death. Right? Death of a loved one in any of all of those multiple forms. But there are over 40 different loss events that can affect all of our lives. And when I first started to deep dive into that, I was like, give me a list. I can't believe there's 40. And I've actually added to that list. So it could be a main one of death of a loved one, your partnership, your divorce, your job, your health, your wealth, even your pets. But if we look back at the 2020 pandemic, we can actually see a lot of the minor ones came to the forefront. Loss of freedom, loss of choice, loss of status, changing work conditions, changing recreational activities, changing social activities. So when we understand that there are so many different loss events in our lives, we can start to understand why, when this happens to us, any of them, we go into a grief and loss situation. why we feel the way we do. And that's the biggest problem, is most people don't see it as a grief situation. So we're saying to our friends and family, what's wrong with you? Get over it. Just move on. All of these things, which is causing people to go into their avoidance tactics, to grieve alone in isolation. And you just got to look at the world, you know, the $1 trillion pharmaceutical and alcohol industries were created. Why the suicide rate is so high is because we've never been taught to understand loss. And that's what I help people do. I help them to understand loss, but then I help them to very easily move beyond it. And I've created this 5-step process, which not only works for any sort of loss, it doesn't matter what the loss event, the steps are exactly the same, but it's a formula that you then have for the rest of your life. Because with 40 plus loss events, loss will visit you again. And it's nice to be able to know, right, when it happens, okay, I don't need to grieve and suffer for weeks and months and years. I can actually go and do this 5-step process, find the lessons, find the gifts. I actually call it the gift of loss. And then you can and the 5th stage is to pivot, where you can actually go, right, now I can go forward and I can create the life that I want to live and love each and every day. And that's what I've done, and that's why I love it.
Fantastic. And just talking to you now, I realized from my own experience of having postnatal depression, that's what it was. It was the loss of the former life that I was used to, and not being able to do all of those things, and then not being able to drown my sorrows in alcohol like I probably would have normally done because I was breastfeeding, which makes it that much harder to deal with.
It's so true. And look, I shouldn't laugh at postnatal depression, but when you think of women who have been, you know, probably having 10, 20, 30 people reporting to them, and all of a sudden this little baby is controlling them, you can sort of see why, you know, postnatal depression is a major thing in our society today, because it's huge. Like, I had my kids when I was young, you know, before I did my big corporate sort of life. You know, my oldest son is, he's 40 in a couple of months, and I was 24 when I had him. So it's really was so much easier because I hadn't been in those roles. They all came later. When they were teenagers. That I really feel for women. But postnatal depression is a major loss, because not only you're losing yourself, like your body is different, everything's different. You've got these hormones just running around inside of you that you don't even know what they're about, and it is huge. And and it is important for people to realize it's okay. It is okay to grieve your life. And one of the things that I've noticed the most, Leonie, with every single person that I actually work with, is loss of identity comes up all the time. You know, I just recently worked with an amazing lady out of Scotland, and her husband had passed 18 months before we met. And she just did more or less what I did. She went straight back to work. She was a business coach, and she was really proud of the fact that she hadn't missed a session with any of her clients, and really her business had grown in that time. But she was exhausted. She was putting on weight. She was just exhausted. And when we met, she actually came through the process that we did. She said, the biggest loss of my life is the fact I've lost my identity. Her husband had been sick for 8 years, so she'd become his carer as well as working. And she said that through the process, she realised all her life, a little bit gets chipped away here and another little bit gets chipped away here. And no matter what age you are, to do this process and bring you back to you, to the joy and the love and the fulfillment that we all desire, to actually realize that, do you know what? I'm important in my life. And it's important for me to bring me back into it. So that to me has been one of the hugest learnings in actually assisting people to move beyond their loss. And we normally end up working on a different loss event than the one that brought them to them. Sure, we do that down the road, but they find that there's one that they really would through the process, they go, no, I think I need to do this loss first. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I do similar work with my photography clients. A lot of my boudoir clients, you know, they've given, they give, and they give, and they're there for everybody else, but they don't give themselves permission to do anything for themselves. So it's usually like, you know, you're dealing with all these emotions and all of these fears and all of these things telling them they shouldn't do it because they're putting themselves first.
Yeah, I know. And it's, you know, we've all been brought up that way. Oh, it's selfish if you put yourself first. But the reality is that when you do actually put yourself first, you are there more for everyone else because you've energized yourself. You're not in resentment. You're not exhausted. And you know how to say no. And I think that's the biggest issue with so many women is we don't set our boundaries and we don't know how to say no.
Yes, and those boundaries are really important. And I think I'm still learning those boundaries, but even, you know, with your children to let them know, okay, no, this is me time. That can wait. Whatever that is, that can wait.
Yeah, and I love me time. You know, I created my energy time, my exuberance time, my exercise time. Whatever it is, it's so important that we do actually get it. And the thing is that when you allow people to have their me time, you get a better me that comes back to you. So it's definitely worthwhile for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I know that you also help companies. So coming from that CFO position, you've seen what company culture is and how it can get quite toxic from that perspective. So I love that you do this because it's something that I've been talking to my husband about, you know, company culture and what that looks like and how every company needs to kind of put that at the forefront, because if you've got happy people that work for you, they're going to do the selling for you. They're going to turn up, they're going to show up. So that's like one of the main things that companies really need to focus on. Tell us a little bit more about how you do that and how that all started.
Yeah. So how it all started was when I first left and became a life coach, I sort of lost the really tough masculine part of me, which is who I had to be just to survive in the world that I was in as a CFO and, you know, a senior manager for more than 25 years. But what I found was the more I went into my feminine, the more my masculine side of me was going, hey, wait a minute, you can't cut half your life out. You know, you were that role for a reason. So I started to deep dive into that and I thought, you know what, I was really good at my role. I was an amazing accountant. And so I started to think, imagine if I had known then what I know now. How different would I have been in my role? How different would I have been to my employees, to my, you know, colleagues? And I started to really think, wow, how great would it be? What a better workplace it would have been and how much more profitable it would have been. Now, I know how to make a company profitable, okay? I've got the mechanics. How could I not? I've got a master's in accounting.
Yeah.
But it was the people part of it that I really didn't understand. So the more I deep dived into loss, the more I understood people and the more I understood why people may be behaving the way that they are. So I started to really, really bring the two parts of me together. And I call it the people and profits connection. Because we need to understand that when we start to treat our employees as our greatest asset, they will become our greatest asset, right?
Absolutely.
And if you think about your assets that are really working for you, you maintain them, you give them rest, you make sure that they're always ready to be at their peak performance when they need to be, but you don't slob them 24/7 because you know they'll break down. And that's the thing that I found our attitude towards most of our employees are that we want them to be one-dimensional. We want you to leave every single area of your life at the door, just bring your professional self into this workplace, which isn't realistic. It's never going to happen. In the Chaston Centre Wellness Wheel, we have 9 areas of life. So you can't expect people to leave all of that at the door, you know, just come in one night. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I found was the more that I deep dived into it, the more that I started to understand that when you bring the whole person into the workplace and you give the person time to make sure that all of their areas of life are actually rolling along nicely, they will come to work rested, restored, ready to just focus on what they have to do because all the other parts of their life are running along quite nicely. But more importantly, you get to understand your employees. You get to know them, you get to like them, and you get to trust them. And it works the other way as well. They get to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
So through understanding loss and understanding that we're all going to have multiple loss events, you can start to see when your employees, something may be happening in their life. All of a sudden they're drinking more than they used to, or they're not showing up, or they're really tired. And it is about what's going on. Like, how can we help you to work through this, to become more resilient? It's not a therapy session. It's just an understanding that the more that you look after your employees, the more that they will actually assist you to build the best possible product, to provide the most amazing customer experience, and to therefore have the best possible company because you will be thriving in all areas because your people are thriving. It really is that simple. And it's like, wish I'd known that at a younger age. It would have been completely different.
Yeah, because can you imagine, if your boss came to you and said to you, look, I can see something's going on, how about you take the rest of the day off and come back refreshed tomorrow, rather than waiting for, I need a month of mental health leave.
Yeah, exactly. And by then, it's like, for example, if you maintain it all the time, well, it's really easy. Whereas if you don't, it is a major overhaul. And of course, cancer is caused from stress. Cancer is caused from not dealing with your emotions, from not living and loving your life. So the more that you actually assist people to thrive, they will give it back to you 1,000%, because that's what people want, is for you to actually go, do you know what? I value you. I respect you. I would like your opinion on something. When people are valued and respected, they will actually put their hand up, they'll use their voice, and they'll say, have you ever thought of this? This may save you some money, or this can give you another revenue stream. But we never ask. For some reason, we think only the managers at a certain level have ideas and opinions. It's like, no, you actually have all of your staff who have ideas. They just haven't been given the opportunity to share them with you. And that's what I do when I go into the organizations. I actually say to them, give me your worst employee. Give me your worst employee, right? Because I know that I will either get their worst employee to leave or to become one of their best. And isn't that a win-win scenario? And then I'll say, give me your best employee and let's see what happens. Because I know that once they understand who they are, once they work through whatever has gone on in their life in the past, they can then come and go, wow, they're so much lighter, they're so much energized, and that they can go, do you know what? I'm here for a purpose and I will do it. And if they're not connected, they'll leave. And isn't that what you want?
Yeah. And what a great way for a company to be innovative instead of waiting for everyone at the top who have always done the same thing the same way and don't question it because this is how it's always been done and it's always worked before. It's not always going to stay the same. It's not always going to work. So what better way than to ask the fresh eyes of everyone else around you?
Exactly. I can always remember that when I in the early 90s, I worked for Dreamworld, right? And I was there for a long time. We went into receivership, and the receivers didn't ask the senior managers. They interviewed the 400 staff, and they said to them, if this was your business, what would you stop doing and what would you start doing? And do you have any ideas for revenue generation? They got so many amazing ideas from asking their employees, because they were the ones that were dealing with the customers. They were the ones that said, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And it was such a great idea that it always stuck with me. And I was always asking my employees for better ideas and things like that. But under stress, I would forget to do that because it was like, no, I'll just do it my way because it's really quick. Whereas it is such a shame that we forget that, because everyone is human and everyone has an idea. We live in a world of infinite possibilities. So why do we feel that our way is the only way and the right way? It's just not. And as I said, I didn't have that perspective when I was younger.
And that human experience, bringing that into the workplace, is going to then cross over into your customer base as well.
Oh,
because
totally.
as a customer, how good do you feel when you're treated like an actual human being?
I know. And how bad do you feel when you walk in somewhere and you're ignored for 10 minutes and you think, I'm out of here, I'm not going to give you my money. So, yeah.
Yeah. So if all of your staff are operating from this really beautiful space where they all feel connected and supported, that's going to come across into how your customers associate with your business as well.
Totally. And if you put it on your website, so many people now research businesses and they like to see, what is your environment policy? How do you treat your staff? How do you do things differently for your staff? And you really do want to become the employer where everyone wants to come and work. If you just think back to so many great people who did that, who paid their employees a little bit more. They gave them these great benefits. There's actually a business in America. It's Tower Paddleboards, and the owner is called Stefan Aristotle. And he is known he went on to the American Shark Tank, and he's known as the worst presenter who actually got a deal, and which is incredible in itself. But what he did was he decided to, and he's written a book on it. It's called The 5-Hour Workday. And it's so amazing that he figured out between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. are the best hours for all of us to work, because we haven't, we're still awake. We've just woken up. We haven't had lunch, so we're not digesting food. And he got his workplace to be working on the majority. Some days they will work longer, but he set it up so that they work between 8 and 1 every day, a 5-hour workday, paid them exactly the same as what they did, because what he found was and he only trialed it for 6 months initially. It's 3 months initially, our summer experiment, he called it. And because they loved going home earlier, they got healthier. They started to eat properly. They had better relationships with their family and with their friends. But when they showed up, they showed up. He said, I don't care what you do, what sort of investment in technology you require, but you have to do the same amount of workload that you now do over 8-10 hours in those 5 hours. And they did it. And so much so that he said that they actually work for me 24/7 because they are continually thinking of a better way to do their job so they can be more productive, because they know that if they are more productive, they won't lose their job. They won't lose their salary because they're getting paid like they were before. And they said the benefits was amazing. And the guy actually increased their bottom line by 50% more.
Wow, isn't that incredible?
Working less, but and it's such a great book. I learned so much from that book that I actually went, yes. Now, I understand that some businesses cannot fit into that model, but imagine if they had that mindset of let's bring our 10, 12-hour day back to 8 or back to 7. Imagine if we did that and we still produce what we did, because as he said in the book, he said that we're now knowledge workers. We're not labourers like we were, say, back in the early 20th century. So we're knowledge workers. We can't think continually all day long. And whether they're physically in the office, they're not physically working and thinking and doing things. So why not bring it down to a shorter time, get it done, get out, start and enjoy your life.
Absolutely. I know, even when I do a big day in front of the computer, you go home, you're tired, you've got a headache, the kids are all like, meow, 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 and you're just like, oh, just give me 5 minutes. Whereas, if you cut a few hours out, went home at lunchtime, went for a walk around the block, you'd be a different person.
A walk around the block is amazing. Breathing, even if you sat in your car for 5 minutes, breathing, like eyes closed, breathing, deep delving into your belly and releasing those breaths for 5 minutes, you'd be a completely different person when you walked in. And they'll go, wow, who's this mum walking in? Where's my real mum? What's happened to her?
That is a great tip.
It's an amazing tip. Honestly, our breath is so underutilized. You know, we breathe to live, but our breath actually helps us to truly live our life. It's the most amazing thing. But it's a conscious, and I call it a conscious loving breath, where you literally breathe deep into your belly, because in that belly we have the nerve endings of the vagus nerve, which goes all the way up to our hypothalamus. And our hypothalamus is our like our main center of our brain. So the more that you breathe into that, the more that you re-energize yourself, the more you put yourself into your parasympathetic nervous system, the more that you're going to rest and restore and start to bring in these amazing hormones into yourself. Now, can you believe I know all that? I certainly didn't as an accountant. I wish I did. I was like, why didn't I know this earlier? Like, why didn't they get us at school and go, okay, biochemistry, all of you shut up and listen. This is what you're going to need for the rest of your life. I really do it, because it just makes such a difference. Yeah. Totally.
And I hope that they do bring a lot more of this into schools and into education, because it's the same theme running through. Look at all of the women coming on the podcast. We're all, touching on the same things that we've learnt in our own experience through doing our own research, through learning our own lessons, through having our own failures. And at times it's more important than what they're learning when they're going to school.
Totally. Would we have valued it? Maybe not, but we would have remembered it. It's like that old maths problem that when you may need it in life. Oh, what was it again? What was that formula? You'd go research and you go, oh, yeah, that's what it was. Okay, right, I breathe. And the more you do it, of course, it just becomes a habit and you just do it. But, yeah, it's so much better to breathe than, like, go for that alcohol or that next drink, I was drinking a bottle of wine a day. And the last 2.5 years, I have stopped drinking alcohol and I don't even miss it. It was, started off as a 2019 experiment and I didn't miss it at all. So I sort of figure, well, why drink?
Yeah. And how much better for it do you feel now?
So much better, and initially it wasn't easy because everyone was, you got to have a drink with me. Like, you can't do it. And I was like, no, just respect my wishes. It's just for 1 year. And then at the end of it, or even probably from about August on, I knew that I was probably going to stop forever. But I just didn't want to think of it. Came to the end of the year and I thought, well, I don't miss it. I feel better for it. My skin's a lot better for it. Everything's a lot better for it. My relationships are definitely a lot better for it. So I just went, well, I don't need it. And I don't. And it was amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Karen, if people are looking for where to find you, what's the best place to find you at?
Okay, so obviously I'm everywhere. The ChastonCentre.com is a great great website, or I even have KarenChaston.com. I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, either Karen Chaston or the Chaston Centre. I'm everywhere. And I've got such a good name that if you type me into a website, I normally come up first. So that's cool.
Don't you love that? I've got that too. It's so good.
I know. I feel sorry for people who, have someone's famous name or something like that. You think you're never going to get your top rating. So,
yeah. Get those Google ratings.
Exactly.
Karen, it's been absolutely fabulous chatting with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, thank you. I've had heaps of laughs and smiles, and that's amazing. So thank you, Leonie, and all the best with this, because it's really important what you're doing for, for people of any age, male, female. It's really important for everyone to understand that, we are all empowered to shine.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Shine podcast. My name's Leonie Bolt, and I'm glad that you were able to join us today. I hope you got some serious inspiration from today's episode. If you'd like to find more episodes, go to leoniebolt.com/podcasts or start subscribing on your favorite podcast streaming channel. I look forward to seeing you again soon.